Mr. President, distinguished senators, good afternoon again. As my colleague, Lead Manager Raskin mentioned, I know it's been a long few days, and I want to say thank you, that we're very grateful for your patience, for your attention, and the attention that you have paid to every one of our managers as they have presented our case. As Lead Manager Raskin mentioned, I hope, I trust that we could all agree that if a president incites a violent insurrection against our government, that that's impeachable conduct. So what I'd like to do as we close our case is just walk you through why our evidence overwhelmingly establishes that President Trump committed that offense. Now, as you consider that question of whether the president incited an insurrection, there are three questions that reasonably come to mind. Was violence foreseeable? Did he encourage violence? And did he act willfully? And I'm going to show you why the answer to every one of those questions has to be yes. First, let's start with foreseeability. Was it foreseeable that the violence would erupt on January 6th if President Trump lit a spark? Was it predictable that the crowd at the Save America rally was poised on a hair trigger for violence, that they would fight, literally, if provoked to do so? Of course it was. When President Trump stood up to that podium on January 6th, he knew that many in that crowd were inflamed, were armed, were ready for violence. It was an explosive situation, and he knew it. We've shown you the evidence on this point. You've seen it. The images, the videos, the articles, and the pattern, which show that the violence on that terrible day was entirely foreseeable. We've showed you how this all began with the big lie, the claim that the election was rigged and that President Trump and his supporters were the victims of a massive fraud, a massive conspiracy to rip away their votes. We've showed you how President Trump spread that lie and how over the course of months, with his support and encouragement, it inflamed part of his base, resulting in death threats, real-world violence, and increasingly extreme calls to stop the steal. We established that after he lost the election, the president was willing to do just about anything to prevent the peaceful transfer of power, that he tried everything he could do to stop it. You'll recall the evidence on the screen. Him pressuring and threatening state election officials, attacking them to the point of literally calling them enemies of the state, threatening at least one of them with criminal penalties. Then attacking senators, members of Congress, all across the media, pressuring the Justice Department, prompting outcries from assistant U.S. attorneys, not to mention his own attorney general, reportedly telling him that the stolen election claims were, quote, BS, not my phrase, his. And then, as January 6th approached, he moved on to attacking his own vice president, openly and savagely. We recounted throughout that entire period all the ways in which President Trump inflamed his supporters with lies that the election was stolen. And as every single one of us knows, nothing in this country is more sacred, nothing, than our right to vote, our voice. And here you have the President of the United States telling his supporters that their voice, that their rights as Americans were being stolen from them, ripped away. That made them angry. Angry enough to stop the steal, to fight like hell to stop the steal. And we showed you this. You saw the endless tweets, the rallies, the statements encouraging and spreading that big lie. You saw that he did this over and over again with the same message each time. You must fight to win it back. You must never surrender, no matter what. And remember, each time that his supporters along the way showed violence, he endorsed it, encouraged it, praised it. All part of that same demand to stop the steal and fight like hell. Remember the video that Manager Plaskett showed you from Texas? Some of his supporters encircling a bus of campaign workers on a highway. People easily could have been killed. Easily. What did he do? He tweeted it and made a joke about it at a rally. Called them patriots. Held them out as an example of what it means to stop the steal. When he told his supporters to stop the steal, they took up arms to literally intimidate officials to overturn the election results. You saw the evidence, and so did he. And he welcomed it. And when President Trump attacked Georgia's Secretary of State for certifying the results, his supporters sent death threats. You saw those in great detail from Manager Dean. What did he do? He attacked the election officials further. When his supporters gathered together to have a second Million MAGA rally, that's the rally that Manager Plaskett showed you, a rally about the stolen election, he tweeted that the fight had just begun. What happened next? It's not rocket science. Fights broke out. Stabbings. Serious violence. Now, President Trump, like all of us, he saw what happened at that rally. He saw all the violence, the burnings, the chaos. How did he respond? He tweeted praise of the event. And then, see it on the screen, he bought $50 million worth of ads to further promote his message to those exact same people. He immediately joined forces with that very same group. He joined forces with the same people that had just erupted into violence. Was violence predictable? Was it obvious that the crowd on January 6th was poised for violence? Prepared for it? Absolutely. And this isn't just clear, looking back in time. It was widely recognized at the time. In the days leading up to January 6th, there were dozens, hundreds of warnings. And he knew it. He knew the rally would explode if provoked. He knew all it would take was a slight push. Remember, you heard from Manager Plaskett, the chatter on social media, websites that the Trump administration monitored and were known to the Trump operation. It showed that the people he invited to the January 6th rally took this as a serious call to arms. That this was not just any attack. It was to storm the Capitol if necessary, to stop the steal. And it wasn't just clear on these websites that the Trump administration was monitoring. I mean, the FBI issued reports about this as a credible threat, a threat to target us. Law enforcement made 6 arrests that night before. 6 arrests. Newspapers across the city warned of the risk of the violence. There can be no doubt that the risk of violence was foreseeable. And what did he do in the days leading up to the rally? Did he calm the situation? Ask yourself. Did he call for peace? No. He didn't do that. He spread his big lie more. The most dangerous lie, as I mentioned, that Americans' votes were being stolen and that the final act of theft would occur here in the Capitol. And then he assembled all of those supporters. He invited them to an organized event on a specific day, at a specific time, matched perfectly to coincide with the joint session of Congress, to coincide with the steal that he had told them to stop by any and all means. Again, he was told by law enforcement and all over the news that these people were armed and ready for real violence. He knew it. He knew it perfectly well, that he had created this powder keg at his rally. He knew just how combustible that situation was. He knew there were people before him who had prepared, who were armed and armored. He knew they would jump to violence at any signal, at any sign from him that he needed them to fight, that he needed them to stop the steal. And we all know what happened next. Second question. Did he encourage the violence? Standing in that powder keg, did he light a match? Everyone knows the answer to that question. The hours of video you all have watched leave no doubt. Just remember what he said on January 6th.
All of us here today do not want to see our election victory stolen. There's never been anything like this. It's a pure theft in American history. Everybody knows it. Make no mistake, this election was stolen from you, from me, and from the country.
At the opening of...
We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved. And to use a favorite term that all of you people really came up with, we will stop the steal. We must stop the steal. We will not let them silence your voices. We're not going to let it happen. Not going to let it happen. Thank you. And you have to get your people to fight, because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong. And we fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
You may remember at the outset of this trial that I told